Coworker framed me for a $25,000 loss. She said, "You're finished." I flipped the script, and she ended up jobless. I need to tell you all about the time my coworker tried to ruin my life. I'm not talking about some petty office drama here. This was the kind of sabotage you only see in bad movies, except it was very real and nearly cost me everything. It happened a couple of years ago when I worked at a logistics company in Toledo, Ohio. If you've ever been in logistics, you know it's not a glamorous job. It's spreadsheets, phone calls, deadlines, and a whole lot of stress. But I was good at it. Really good. I was a senior inventory coordinator, which basically means I was the person responsible for making sure shipments went where they were supposed to go, when they were supposed to go. Every day was a balancing act, managing suppliers, clients, and my small team of 6. It wasn't an easy job, but I liked it. At least, I liked it until Celine showed up. Celine joined the company as a liaison between my department and corporate. Right off the bat, something about her rubbed me the wrong way. She was one of those people who walked into a room and acted like she owned it, even though she didn't know what she was doing half the time. She was all smiles and fake laughs in front of the higher-ups, but with us? Completely different story. She'd nitpick everything, hover over my team, and make snide comments about how things could be done better. She wasn't even technically my boss, but she acted like she was. At first, I tried to keep things professional. I figured she'd settle in and learn the ropes. But she didn't. Instead, she seemed to zero in on me. She'd forget to pass along important updates, schedule meetings when I was swamped, and once, she even pulled my team into a meeting without telling me. When I confronted her about it, she acted all innocent, saying, "Oh, I thought you knew." Yeah, right. Things came to a head when we landed a major deal with a supplier out of Chicago. This was a big one, $25,000 worth of high-value inventory. It was the kind of project that could make or break a department, and I was in charge of overseeing it. I took it seriously, double-checking every step of the process. The order was packed, the paperwork was completed, and everything was ready to go. Or so I thought. The day after the shipment was supposed to arrive, I got a frantic call from the supplier. They said they'd only received half the order, and the rest was nowhere to be found. My stomach dropped. Missing inventory? That had never happened on my watch. I immediately started digging into the records to figure out what went wrong. Within hours, corporate was on my case. Harold, my manager, called me into his office. "Ida," he said, "we've got a serious problem here. Celine mentioned she noticed some discrepancies in your paperwork. Can you explain what happened?" I could feel my blood boiling. Discrepancies? There were no discrepancies. I'd checked that paperwork 3 times before the shipment went out. But there was no point in arguing with Harold. I just told him I'd look into it and get back to him. That's when I started to suspect Celine had something to do with this. She'd been hovering around the project for weeks, asking questions that didn't seem relevant and offering to help. It felt like she was setting me up, but I didn't have proof. Not yet. I stayed late that night, poring over emails, inventory logs, and delivery schedules. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, but eventually, I found it, an email from Celine to the supplier. She'd sent it a week before the shipment left, redirecting part of the order to a different facility. And she didn't copy me on it. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart racing. This wasn't a mistake. She'd done this on purpose. The next morning, I confronted her in the break room. I'll never forget the look on her face. She didn't even try to deny it. She just smirked and said, "You're finished. Idaho Corporate won't stand for a $25,000 loss on your watch." The way she said it, so calm and confident, sent chills down my spine. She wasn't just trying to sabotage me, she wanted me gone. I didn't know what to do at first. She had Harold wrapped around her finger, and corporate only cared about the bottom line. If I didn't handle this carefully, I could lose my job, my reputation, everything. But I wasn't about to let Celine win. I decided to fight back. I took a deep breath and decided to be smart about this. Going straight to Harold with my suspicions wouldn't work. He already seemed to trust Celine, and if I accused her without solid proof, it would just make me look desperate. So, I did what Celine didn't expect. I played the long game. First, I forwarded that email she sent to the supplier to my personal account. I knew if things escalated, I'd need my own copy of it. Then, I started gathering evidence, quietly. I went through every document related to that shipment, comparing timestamps and cross-referencing them with Celine's emails. It was slow work, but the more I dug, the more I found. She had not only redirected the shipment but also tampered with the inventory logs to make it look like I'd signed off on the changes. She was good, I'll give her that. But she wasn't as good as she thought. By the end of the week, I had a folder full of evidence, emails, altered records, even screenshots of Slack messages where she contradicted herself. I knew I had enough to prove what she'd done, but I wasn't ready to show my hand just yet. Celine thought she had me cornered, and I wanted her to feel safe in that delusion a little longer. Meanwhile, I started laying the groundwork with Harold. I casually mentioned that I'd been reviewing the shipment issue and found some interesting details. He looked surprised but didn't press for specifics, so I left it at that. I wanted him curious but not suspicious. Then, I set a trap. The company had another big shipment coming up, this time to a supplier in Detroit. It wasn't as valuable as the Chicago order, but it was still significant enough to draw Celine's attention. I made sure she overheard me talking to my team about the shipment and how important it was to get everything right. Sure enough, she started lurking around, asking questions and offering to help. I acted like I didn't notice, even though I knew exactly what she was up to. This time, I was ready. I deliberately left a few mistakes in the inventory logs, things that would be easy to spot if someone were digging for dirt. Sure enough, Celine took the bait. She went straight to Harold, claiming she'd found serious errors in my paperwork and suggesting he pull me off the project. But what she didn't know was that I'd already flagged those errors to Harold myself, framing them as a test for my team. I'd even CC'd him on an email about it days earlier. When Harold called me into his office, I acted surprised but cooperative. "Oh, those? I caught them earlier and already fixed them. Didn't you see my email?" I pulled it up on my phone and showed it to him. His face went red, and I could tell he was starting to see through Celine's act. But I wasn't done yet. I waited until the Detroit shipment was completed, perfectly, I might add, before going to HR. I laid out everything, the altered logs, the redirected shipment, the fake errors. I showed them the email where Celine changed the delivery address without my knowledge and the timestamps proving she'd tampered with the records. HR took one look at the folder I handed them and said, "We'll handle it." A week later, Celine was called into a meeting with HR and Harold. I wasn't in the room, but I heard she tried to deny everything at first. Then, they showed her the evidence. Apparently, she turned pale as a ghost and started stammering about misunderstandings. It didn't matter. By the end of the day, she was packing up her desk. But the best part? HR didn't just fire her. They reported her to the Logistics Board, which oversees certifications for people in our field. Tampering with shipment records is a big deal, and it turns out this wasn't the first time Celine had pulled something shady. She lost her certification and was blacklisted from working in logistics again. The cherry on top? Corporate sent out an email to the entire company, thanking me for ensuring the integrity of our operations and identifying areas for improvement. It was the most polite way they could say, "Thanks for catching the snake in our midst." Celine was humiliated, and I got the recognition I deserved. Now, every time I think about Celine's smug little smirk, I just smile. She thought she could ruin me, but in the end, she ruined herself. And me? I got a promotion 3 months later. That's the full story. Justice served.